it's time for the confession. But first of all, we need a sharpener from the drinks trolley. What have you picked, Suze? What are we going to have today?
Something quite tasty today, but quite different. It's a black lager. It's called Amplify Your Sound, 5.2% from Lost and Grounded. And hops-wise, Magnum, Pearl, and Millifrew.
Never heard of them. Does anyone want a black lager? I mean, I'm not quite sure. I suppose isn't that? Does it look like a Guinness? I suppose it does.
It's dark in colour. It's black in colour, but it's not. Yeah, it's not like a Guinness at all. It's like a Pilsner lager, but it's black.
A half for Matt, and he will sample it for us.
Yes,
why
not?
Thank you very much indeed.
Fine.
Today's confession comes from James. Thank you, James, for this tale. Father Simon and the Holy Collective. I'm writing to confess to a childhood act I undertook many years ago, which put my father in bad stead amongst the community. The year is 2006, and my father was the local vicar in a popular village in Somerset. He certainly was the pillar of our community, and he would organise lots of social fundraising events to raise money, raise awareness, and draw people together. And this particular event was called A Party in the Park, an annual summer event where the local primary school, local businesses, and up-and-coming bands would get together and have a bit of a knees-up in a large local park. People in their hundreds would flock to the event and raise money for local causes and village improvements. My father was a master at doing this, and so therefore was well respected and cherished. Back in those days, Father Simon's social media wasn't really around, so in order to advertise, my father had to send big communal emails around to his congregation and the wider community, lots of which were people of high standing and great wealth. As a 9-year-old child, I at times would help and assist where I could and was excited to be doing such a fun thing with him. But I still had a mischievous streak. And one evening he was busy typing away in his office while I was playing in my bedroom. He was suddenly called downstairs to deal with something that took an age and then had to pop out for a while. With that, I entered his office and began to have a fiddle around with his computer. He didn't lock the screen or apply passwords. Why would he need to in his own home? And he's a priest and everything. I then mischievously altered a few things here and there just for a bit of fun on his email draft. And suddenly, to my horror, I realized I had accidentally pressed send on the email link. And in a panic, I quickly shut the computer down and ran back to my room, hoping that what I had done never actually happened, or that maybe no one would notice. Well, the next morning, nothing was said, so I went to school as per usual, had a lovely day. However, when I came back home from school, I was greeted by a very cross and confused-looking father. "What's the matter?" I said. He looked at me, grimaced, and beckoned so that I had to follow him upstairs to his study. Excuse me. "Do you know anything about this email?" He's a priest, and that's
Yeah, that is very good. Yeah.
He questioned me with a stern face. He showed me a few choice emails which he had received in response to his big communal email that had gone out, sent to 100 local people, bands, entertainers, business owners, parents, teachers of the school, the mayor, and the Wurzels.
The Wurzels?
The Wurzels had received this as well.
Yes.
And what had been sent? Well, even at 9 years old, unbeknownst to my father, I was a bit of a whiz with computers. I was in particular a fan of the find and replace button.
Oh, no.
And my mischievous streak had made me replace the word party and replace it with the word poo. Harmless and funny, I thought. However, the word party had been written a whopping 17 times in the email, which meant the word poo had replaced it 17 times. So the email had been sent, not an invitation to a party in the park, but a poo in the park. Sentences would change from, "We'd love you to attend a great summer party," to "We would love you to attend a great summer poo."
Wow.
And phrases like, "Who doesn't like a lovely poo in the glorious sunshine? It's going to be the best poo of the year."
It is. Oh, yes.
Even the opening tagline was, "It's poo time." Well, inside my stomach was in knots, full of laughter, but I daren't let it out, obviously, and I pleaded ignorance and denied all knowledge of such antics. The only thing I could manage to say was, "Oh, Dad, you and computers, what did you press?" Well, he'd never been so embarrassed. Not only had he sent this rude email to the whole community and the Wurzels, but he was led to believe it was down to his incompetence on the computer. Anyway, an email checked and double-checked and triple-checked by my mother was resent out to all parties involved with a little grovelling explanation to ignore any previous correspondence. A few months later, the party in the park happened. It was a huge success. Of course, my father got a few jibes and smirks from local folk, and he took a bit of banter around the lines of, "Hey, Reverend, what a fantastic poo you've organised." "Gotta say, Father, one of your best summer poos." And so on, and so on. My father, to this day, some 20 years on, never realised that it was me, his naughty 9-year-old, mucking around with his computer and causing embarrassment forevermore. I do feel now that I need to confess. So my fate, if you get it, is over to you.
Oh, fate. Oh, right.
Fate.
With an E and an umlaut over the E.
Circumflex,
Circumflex, that's right. Sorry, I got the wrong accent. Obviously, you need to get the accent right.
Yes.
Anyway, it's a good old lark, you have to say. What do you make of that then, Suze?
James, I find this really, really funny. And you were only 9, so part of me just wants to say, I forgive you, because what a funny confession. But, you could have come clean to your dad. He's a priest and everything.
20 years later.
So long, such a long time. And, I hope he's listening, and I hope you go and apologise to him now anyway. But just for the laughs, the best poo in the summer, I'm just going to forgive.
Yes. Who doesn't like a lovely poo in the glorious sunshine?
The sunshine.
Outside.
It's from a priest, so it's okay, Brother Matthew.
Well, I'm definitely going to forgive because it was all a bit of fun. It's absolutely guaranteed. If anyone gets an email that says, "Please ignore my previous email," everyone's clicking on the previous email. There'll be good stuff in this. And it turns out there was plenty of poo, which was great news for everyone. So I'm going to forgive. It wasn't incompetent. You don't just type poo that many times, do you? You type party and it is changed to poo, which is how a lot of parties do turn out. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive. Yes.
Okay, and it involves the clergy and it involves poo, so it's like a perfect confession.
Yes.
So, does James get your forgiveness, please? On the text 61054, first word is Simon. Just before the news, a priestly confession from James, who altered an email from his priestly father, changing the party in the park and every mention of the word party to the word poo, resulting in it's going to be the best poo of the year. Who doesn't like a lovely poo in the sunshine, and so on. Anyway, the people's verdict, here we go.
I definitely forgive, says Brian. I've been stuck in a traffic jam for 40 minutes and was feeling really fed up, but the poo confession made me laugh out loud.
There you go.
Suzanne in Blandford, forgiven. Today's confession made me laugh so much. It was hilarious. And a typical word, poo, that a mischievous 9-year-old would use. I totally forgive. It made my day. And finally, Anonymous says, definitely forgiven. 40 years ago, when word processors were first a thing, I taught my colleague how to do find and replace, and we replaced the word partners in the partnership agreement to elephants. She forgot that we'd done that, printed it off, and distributed the draft to all the partners, or rather, elephants.
I suspect there might be find and replace confessions all over the place. Anyway, you can send yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And something trundling past on our drinks trolley. Time for a little sharpener before we get to the confession. What have you offering us today, then?
A nice New Zealand pale ale. It's called New Edition, 4.8%.
Yes.
And just for Matt, the hops are Nelson, Sauvin, and Motueka.
Motueka!
Okay, they're top hops, aren't they?
They're great hops.
Toppity hoptastic. Okay, very good. Okay, so today's confession comes from Rebecca, a tired Chelmsford mother, is how she signs. Father Simon and the incredible confessions team. I'm sitting here drinking from my Simon Mayo mug, which was sent to me from the cupboard of Tat, which was an act of kindness from Holly that has made me feel as though I need to share a confession that has been with me for nearly 30 years. So I think that Rebecca is a podcast.
Yes,
Is that Confessions podcast now #1 in almost all territories?
All the charts.
Around
all of them.
I think that's right. I think Susie told me to say that.
Yes, that's true.
Not sure.
My childhood was filled with love, but I do think that money was rather tight at times, as my mum worked as a nurse and my dad worked as a cleaner. I am one of 3 and I am the middle child. The incident happened when I was 5 and my younger brother was 2. My parents had saved for a year and bought a VHS player.
Oh, yes.
So for Holly, this VHS was a video home system which is what VHS stood for. It played video cassettes, big clunky things that recorded video from the television.
From the telly.
That's
Wow.
right. Or
Yeah.
contained pre-recorded films and TV shows.
Oh, that's amazing.
Amazing technology. Our parents bought The Little Mermaid video for me and a Thomas the Tank Engine video for my brother. So me and my brother Rob both loved our new VHS player, and we would watch those films for hours. One minute it would be the adventures of Ariel, the young mermaid with best friends Flounder and dim-witted seagull Scuttle. The next it would be Thomas, the tank engine, James the red engine, Duck the diesel engine.
Duck the diesel,
Of course, and Henry the green engine, the fat controller.
All
I
of
think
them.
that was him.
Yeah.
Magical Days, narrated, of course, by Ringo Starr, who hopefully is going to be on the show very shortly.
Talking about Thomas the Tank? Brilliant.
No, I don't think he's
Oh, is he not?
talking
Oh,
about-
right.
He's talking about his new...
That's a shame.
One day when my dad was at work and my mum was busy getting breakfast ready for us, me and my brother were playing races with some Hot Wheels cars around the living room. So for Holly, again, these were very cool, super fast toy cars
Deep
with
dive into the 80s, this,
with
isn't it?
big tyres, flame stickers and superchargers to make them go even
Yeah.
faster. I had a custom VW and my brother had a Mustang. There were others, but they were definitely the best. I then saw the VHS player and I thought, I wonder if that would make a good garage for my car.
Oh.
So I went, as many children have done. So I went over to the VHS player, pushed back the tape cover, and would you believe it, it fitted perfectly. So I put my car inside. It made a very pleasing whirring and clicking sound. My brother Rob copied everything I did, so he did the same. Repeatedly, you would be amazed how many cars you could fit into our new garage.
Okay.
21 at least.
Right.
We were then called for breakfast and forgot all about the new car garage that we created. That was until my dad got home. He tried to put the Thomas video into the VHS player, but instead found an array of cars and even a bus rattling around in there. I don't know if you've ever tried to remove cars and buses from a VHS player, but it takes a lot of shaking. Anyway, eventually the bus and the others came out, and my dad tried to play the video, but it was making a very loud noise and it kept stopping. So I remember my dad saying to my mum, I know it was Rob, the 2-year-old, but he's just a baby and he's exploring. The VHS was never the same after being used as a garage, and it took my parents a long time to buy a new one. To this day, whenever my parents talk about the day that the new VHS player was broken, they always say that Rob was to blame.
Yes.
I just have never been brave enough to say it was me who started it, and that Rob would never have added cars into it if I hadn't begun the whole process. So I seek forgiveness from my brother, who as a little brother often get blamed for things that I did. I also seek forgiveness from my parents, who have always worked so hard to give me and my brother a wonderful life, and I'm sorry for damaging one of the few luxuries they had. I do wonder, though, if the video companies are to blame, really. That flappy bit in the video player is essentially an invitation to put your toys in.
It is, isn't it?
It might as well have said,
Yeah.
insert your favourite
Yes.
toys here, although they won't be coming out. So kiss goodbye to your Hot Wheels, sunshine. Also installed at child height.
Yes.
That's so wrong.
Yeah.
This is not my fault, and I hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me. I'm now mum of a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, so I appreciate that any small luxury I have as a parent is very, very precious. Well, I think the video player flap had a lot of toys inserted to it, and like honey sandwiches and things like that over the years. What do you say, Sister Suze?
Yeah, I think Rebecca's right there. It is quite inviting for a child, and I do understand, what happens. And I'm quite glad there isn't a VHS around now, because I'm sure my toddler would have done the same thing.
Exactly.
But I am a younger sibling, and I am going to side with the younger brother and say she shouldn't have let him take the blame. She should have owned up. Maybe not when she was a kid, but as an adult, she probably should have told her parents sooner. So I'm not going to forgive.
Also, she was the middle one of 3, so where was the elder sibling?
Probably being responsible. Probably,
Do you think?
yeah, that's what they
my
normally
brother
are.
Matthew would.
Elder
is that
siblings.
right? Is that
yeah,
what you find?
Yeah, that's what I find.
Yeah, of course.
Definitely agree that was a big design flaw of the VHSs, of their tempting little slot. Put stuff in there. When we got one, my sister insisted that we were going to watch Grease and The Sound of Music back to back all summer. What a nightmare! I'd far rather have stuck a bunch of trees all buses in there, then I have to watch that build.
Trees.
Anyway,
Stick a tree in a video player.
So yes, so maybe in a way it was good that she didn't have to watch Little Mermaid, which also would not be on my top 10. So for all those reasons, I'm going to forgive. I mean, what are younger siblings for if you're not going to blame them for things? That's my point of view.
Is that right?
Frankly,
So you can put a tree in a VHS
Put the
player.
tree in there.
Anyway,
watch Grease again.
Does Rebecca get your forgiveness? 61054. People's verdict, please. 61054. But before we go any further, the results are in here. People's verdict for today's confession, which came from tired Rebecca in Chelmsford, who, when she was 5 and her brother was 2, filled the VHS player with Hot Wheels cars, but Rob took the blame until this very day. What are the people's verdicts?
Very much forgiven, says Jenny Walsh. Our children regularly fed jam sandwiches and Lego men into our VHS, much to the chagrin of the repairman. Nice use of chagrin, who was a regular visitor. Ken in Norwich says, forgiven. My son, who shall remain nameless, but is spelt Gavin, used to put farm animals into our Betamax. I forgave him for that, but not for sliding the tone arm across my pristine copy of Sergeant Pepper. Grrr. And Will, stuck in traffic, says not forgiven because Duck was not a diesel engine. Get it right. Thomas the Tank should be taken seriously.
Wasn't Duck the diesel engine?
Well, Duck was it is certainly an engine.
I think
on Island of Sodor.
Okay, well, I'll check it out. Will, thank you. I still think Duck was diesel.
Duck was a diesel.
It was like a square shape. It was all weird.
Oh, right. Should we open the phone lines?
No.
Right, okay.
No, I'll just ask Wikipedia very shortly. Okay, your confessions, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. 14 minutes to 6 o'clock. There goes the trolley. Trundling past. Let's get a sharpener there before we proceed. What have you got for us today, Suze?
You'll like the sound of this one, or maybe you won't. It's called Heritage Dog Bickies.
No, that's not a drink.
Pretty decent beer company. It's a double dry hop pale ale. It's 5%. Mosaic, Simcoe, and Nelson Sauvignon hops.
Okay, well, I'll give it a go.
I like the name.
I'll give anything a go.
It made me laugh.
Certainly. Today's confession comes from Mr. Wilkins. Mr. Wilkins, thank you. Dear Father Simon, all the hard-working confessional collective, which sounds like a grovel to me. 3 years ago, I joined an agency for teaching staff. I had taken early retirement from my teaching post the year prior. I'd signed up with this agency for some part-time work to help keep me busy as retirement was proving to be a little boring. After signing up, I received a call from the agency. They offered me work. It's a work opportunity at a micro school. Now, a micro school is as you might imagine, is a very small school of only 16 pupils in total.
Wow.
The reason for such a small cohort was the complex nature of the students. They were pupils who struggled with anxiety and found it too much to attend a loud, busy high school. They needed a small, calm environment, and I accepted the job, which was for 1 academic year only, from September through to July the following year, to cover the maternity leave of the permanent teacher that worked there. I would be manning the fort while she was away. I joined the existing staff of 3. They work with pupils each day, helping them build confidence and positive attitudes, trying to help them deal with their issues and challenges. It was a lot of work. My job was much simpler. I had the pupils in small groups of 4 during the day. I had to teach them maths and English and try to help them attain exam qualifications come the end of the year. It came with its challenges, but for the most part, it went well. I made positive relationships and most managed to gain qualifications when the exams came round. It was after those May exams that my confession really takes off. With 8 weeks of the academic year still left, I didn't really know what exactly I would be doing. I arrived just before 9 a.m., as I did every morning, made coffee, had a chat with my colleagues, and then the school bell rang and off we went to our respective rooms. I sat down, took a random file from my cupboard, opened it up on my desk. I then lifted my laptop, switched it on, opened a sports website. I looked at it all morning. I read the football news, a bit of gossip. You see, I had no pupils.
Oh.
Not one.
What?
With a few stops for more coffee, I made my way through the online sports news articles until lunchtime. My colleagues and I gathered for lunch. We had a chat about holidays, how the mornings had gone, and we then returned to our rooms. I started getting a little bored. that afternoon. Spelt wrong, by the way, English teacher. There wasn't any more sports news to read, so I did a little bit of daydreaming just to fill the time. I might have closed the file on my desk, put it away and replaced it with a different one. I gradually counted down the minutes until 3 p.m. and then it was home time. My day was done. Thank you, everyone, I said to the empty classroom. Good work. Over the next 8 weeks, this was my routine, my daily job. I'd arrive, chat with colleagues, open up a file, read the sports news. No pupils.
Okay.
No lessons.
Wow.
My colleagues all had preparation to complete to be ready for the new intake of pupils in September. They were confidential case files that could only be handled by themselves. I was not allowed to participate in working them. There was literally nothing for me to do. I had a class, but no pupils. Our school internet restricted the vast majority of websites. I'm sure that's a wise thing. So things like YouTube were sadly blocked. There were CCTV cameras in all the rooms of the school. This prevented me from locking the door and having a kip. It also meant that most afternoons I'd be staring at my screen, trying to look as if I was working. My eyes would be so heavy I would occasionally doze off, only to judder myself awake and prevent my head from falling into my laptop screen. On the one hand, I had been paid to sit at my desk every day and do absolutely nothing. The reality was that it was by far the most boring and challenging 8 weeks of my life. Poor thing. The hours dragged so much, the days took forever. Should I have told them that I had no pupils and no work and no lesson prep? You've heard of the pub with no beer. Well, I was the teacher with no pupils. Father Simon, I need to ask forgiveness from my former colleagues. They thought I was busy in my room. They'd say, how's it going? Genuinely thinking I was getting on with my job. Because they were all busy with their work, they assumed that I was busy with mine. I'd signed up to help fill my time after retirement, only to be more bored than ever before. You would think that being paid to do nothing was a dream job. It turned out to be the longest 8 weeks of my life. If you've got to teach, my advice is to make sure there are at least some pupils who need your attention, says Mr. Wilkins. I mean, you hear of, crowded classrooms and staff being exhausted because of all the extra work that they have to do. But very rarely, in fact, never before, have I heard a case of a teacher with no pupils in his class. Mr. Wilkins needs some forgiveness. I'm not sure he's going to get it. Anyway, Sister Suze.
Well, Mr. Wilkins, you said you were so bored and so, it was so challenging, but I just can't. I've never heard of a class with a teacher with no pupils, and you should have just said. You say how all busy your colleagues were. Can you have just gone up to them and said, "Do you need me to? Can I help? Do you want a hand? Because I've not got much on." You could have done that, and because you didn't, and you just sat there. However long it was and however challenging it was, I don't forgive you.
I think the pupils have missed a trick, because that was always the most entertaining part of school, was the few weeks in school after the exams. What do you say, Matthew? What do you say to Mr. Wilkins?
Let's not lose sight of the fact that it's not Mr. Wilkins' fault that there were no students there. It's whoever's doing the rota. That's who should be getting the blame. Whoever's doing the rota has mucked things up.
That's the
royally
deputy head.
there.
It's always the deputy
head again. So I'm definitely going to forgive there. Probably good. I mean, he was getting bored, but unfortunately can't spell bored. So pretty good that he wasn't passing that on to the students.
Yes.
I would have thought as well. So all round, I think everyone wins. The students win. Mr. Wilkins wins by going on his sport website for 8 weeks, and the school wins.
Yes.
By getting a better rota.
What?
So for all those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
61054. First word is Simon. Forgiven or not? Just before the news, we had our confession for today, a story of Mr. Wilkins, the teacher who had no pupils. And the verdict is in like this.
Forgiven, says Davey. This was the system's fault. Why did they not schedule him to have any pupils? If you get the opportunity to get paid to do nothing, you grab that opportunity with both hands. But Trish in Worcester Park says not forgiven. I'm a state school history teacher and I have 33 pupils in most of my classes. He's moaning for being bored while the rest of us are working hard. But Andy in Chatham says forgiven. Wilkins is totally forgiven. CCTV in the classroom and no one noticed he had no pupils. I feel the deputy head needs to step forward to answer the crime of wasting that poor teacher's time and for not allowing him YouTube.
Well, there's the thing. Thank you for all the verdicts and thank you for your confessions. You can send one to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. It's promising, and that's what we'll be doing just after 6 o'clock. Meantime, we need something just to get our throats lined with something. What are you offering us from your trolley today, Suze?
A very nice session IPA today from Good Chemistry. It's called Kokomo, 4.3%. Very tropical, very nice in the sunshine. Mosaic and Azaka hops.
Never heard of that one, but
Azaka?
Yes,
they're great.
one of Matt's favourites, Frank Zaka. He's always very good.
Yeah, that one.
All right, okay, so today's confession comes from Andy. Obviously, there's a lot of bad behaviour in this particular story.
Dear.
Good.
Don't copy anything that Andy does.
Okay.
Danger.
Dear Confessions team, after around 35 years, I feel it's time to share a burden of guilt from many moons ago. In fact, 35 years. It was that far back in time you could smoke in pubs, and a pint of the finest was about £1. I was part of a particularly fun bunch from Nottinghamshire and South Yorkshire who were part of the Young Farmers movement.
Here we go.
Known at the time for being a little raucous.
All right.
Oh, yeah, a little.
And, well, let's say spirited in behaviour. I did a couple of Young Farmers events in my time.
Yes, you have.
One of them lasted 10 minutes.
Yeah.
A small group of us would on occasion leave the shires and head to the heady heights of tourism like the Lake District for walking, frivolity and a few sherbets. On one of these now legendary trips, we ended up in a particularly local pub for a bite to eat, play cards and spend the night having a jolly old time. Now at the time, many of us would partake in a cigarette. I now know that, of course, smoking is very, very bad for you, but I didn't know this at the time. It was all perfectly legal and above board and even socially acceptable. That's how far back we're going. However, what was not socially acceptable is that one of my mates would help themselves to a cigarette or two when I went to the toilets. This is called theft, Father Simon. And this happened a few times, and I started to get a little bit annoyed. So I hatched a plan to smoke out the culprit, and I found these exploding cigarette bangers in a joke shop and experimented with a couple of those, and they were, to be honest, they were rather rubbish and just a bit of a fizzle, which wasn't going to help anybody. But being a young farmer, and probably much more resourceful than your average person, I wanted more bang for my buck. So I purchased a box of party poppers and removed the charge and cut off the detonating string and carefully, as I said, don't try any of this.
The detonator.
And carefully planted a number of these into some cigarettes.
What?
And returned them to the packet, marking the top of the filter so I knew which ones were modified.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was all prepared. The trap had been set to ensnare the light-fingered ciggy thief. So on our next trip, I was ready. I left my entrapment smokes on the bar. I went to the loo, making sure everyone knew it would be an extended toilet visit. We don't need this kind of detail, actually, Andy. Thank you. I returned to pay for the next round of drinks and collect my ciggies off the bar. To my delight, some had been taken, including a weapons-grade party popper charge. I could barely contain my glee. We continued our evening with merriment and tomfoolery, but despite this, nothing happened. Until it did. The largest explosion I have ever heard, and a plume of smoke and tobacco covered the bar. There was a gentleman at the bar who was about 6'5", 16 stone, and looked like he could bench press cows, holding a filter, the remnants of a cigarette that looked like something out of a Roadrunner cartoon, who was sat immediately next to where I had collected the drinks from. Imagine Jack Reacher with an exploded fag in his mouth.
Okay.
Wow.
That's what we're talking. I think I was as horrified and as shocked as the man at the bar. I was the only one out of the group who knew the truth, and now said man looked very, very angry. He had eyes like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. You know what I'm saying? The rest of the pub was in hysterics. Reacher, however, picked on a random bloke and blamed him for it and tweaked his ear and flicked his nose.
Oh, a little bit more than that, I
Yes.
thought.
I don't think Reacher in Series 3 will be doing anything that gentle.
No.
To this day, Father Simon, I have not told a soul. But I do need to get forgiveness on a number of levels, obviously from the bloke whose nose was tweaked. To my mates who I possibly could have scarred or maimed, to the very angry and bemused cigarette thief who looked like he was going to pull someone limb from limb. And also, here's a final line for you, to my wife, who I've always told that I've never smoked.
Ah! Oh!
And that's
She
why
knows.
Yes. Do you think?
Yeah.
I suppose she probably does. I mean, we're calling him Andy, but Obviously, he's not really called Andy. So he stayed anonymous. Will he come clean? Will he say, I imagine he and his wife are listening there, and he says, that was me? Or maybe he's going to blame it on someone else. Anyway, a cigarette's stupid. An exploding cigarette, also, a little bit dodgy, you have to say. Sister Susie will be on a crusade.
Yeah, it's just smoking, stupid, exploding cigarettes, doing all of that. Danger. That's what I would say. Also, just take them to the toilet with you. Who's leaving them on the bar? He's lucky there was any left at all. No, Andy. Not forgiven from me.
Young Matthew.
Well, I can't be the only one thinking Jack Reacher shouldn't be nicking someone else's fags. Come on, pay for your own fags. And I agree with Suze. Why don't you should put your cigarettes in your pocket when you go to the loo, or maybe you didn't have any pockets. Maybe wearing leather or something. But do they have pockets? I don't know. Anyway, so
Jack Reacher just had a vest.
Jack, he does, doesn't he?
Yes.
But I'm sure he can handle a few exploding cigarettes. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
I mean, basically, if you steal a cigarette, then you don't know what you're going to get.
No, you don't.
So, even if you're a Jack Reacher.
Yeah.
Anyway, the people's verdict, please. Does Andy get forgiven? I don't know. 61054. First word is Simon. But just before the news, we had a confession about Jack Reacher, exploding cigarettes, and the young farmers. The people's verdict is in.
Forgiven, says Jerry. You were young, mildly wronged, and catastrophically over-creative in your response. No lasting harm was done, only pride singed, and a story that's clearly weighed on you ever since. But Maria in Chester says, not forgiven, less for the bang, more for 35 years of claiming you've never smoked to your wife. And finally, Steve says forgiven, who I'm picturing with a fag in his mouth, saying, bit naughty, yeah, but if you leave your smokes lying about, that's on you as well, pal.
That was very good. That was very believable.
Yes.
Okay, please send your confessions to the old email, confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk, and a brand new Confessions podcast will be with you on Friday.